Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In the name of Allah, and all praise is due to Allah, and blessings and peace be upon to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is Mahwash Hassan from National MCNA team. I would like to welcome you all to this very special program, which is designed to promote mental health awareness. So Jazakallah khair for joining us on time. This program is presented to you by MCNA, which is a division of ICNA Sisters. So before we begin today's program, I would like to take this opportunity to share a brief introduction about MCNA and its goals. MCNA stands for Muslim Children of North America. MCNA is a pioneer national organization that caters to the instruction and development of children in North America. It seeks to educate young Muslims to be the leaders of tomorrow. MCNA brings Muslim children of all backgrounds together to learn about Islam. And that's our goal, develop Islamic values in Muslim children so that they can become beneficial future leaders, inshallah. Let's look into some of our programs to get better idea. Our different programs nurture different needs of our children throughout the year. For example, our free monthly prime time provides awareness about current issues and how to deal with real-life concern. MCNA offers the special programs during Ramadan, which we call Journey Through the Quran. We also offer Young Muslims Junior courses especially designed for our youth, ages from 11 years to 14 years, which offer twice a year fall course and a spring course. And our upcoming YMJ course will be starting from next Friday, inshallah. You can see the flyer on the screen. If you haven't registered yet, please register with the link which is available on the flyer and on our Facebook page. There's also MCNA publication which is called Companion Magazine, where children get opportunities to submit their writings, recipes, and riddles, and much more. It's an absolute fantastic opportunity for children to get their writing published in a magazine at a very young age. We also have different competition throughout the year where children can participate and win prizes. We also have book clubs, summer programs, outreach activities, and much more. And all these programs are basically here to encourage leadership skills and provide Islamic awareness and community involvement for the children's growth. MCNA conduct regular sessions at a local level as well as a national level. MCNA students are aiming to be Muslims who will effectively work to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, identify themselves through Islam, and make better society at large. And on this note, I would like to invite you all to join MCNA and be a part of MCNA family. As you can see on the screen, there are multiple MCNA regions and chapters throughout the America. And you can find your area local MCNA chapter or halqa through our website at www.mcnaymj.org. And all upcoming programs information can be found on our social media pages, and recordings can be found on our YouTube channel. So inshallah khair, let's move to our program. So we all know the importance of mental health these days, right? And we see how the pandemic year has impacted the mental health in many, many people, and especially in our youth. So today's program is a hand-in-hand partnership with parents and us. Basically, it's a step towards mental health and well-being. So we have invited a professional and licensed family therapist. She will talk about what parents need to know and how and when to seek professional help, inshallah. So our speaker for today is Sister Madiha Haroon. She has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy from Northern Illinois University. She's a licensed professional counselor and certified drug and alcohol counselor with over 17 years of experience, mashallah. She's a level 2 EMDR and has training in cognitive behavioral therapy. She has completed the externship and advanced training in EFT, which is emotionally focused couples therapy, which is a well-researched and effective modality to increase safety and connection in relationship, mashallah. So without further delay, I would like to invite Sister Madiha Harun. Sister Madiha, the mic is yours now.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khairan for having me here today. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to really acknowledge everybody from the MCNA team for organizing this space here today to talk about such an important and crucial topic, mental health, mental well-being. And I know it's not always easy to create such spaces, but by creating such spaces, we are having to be able to have conversations that would help everybody learn more about mental health, increasing its awareness, hopefully to destigmatize some of the issues that come up with mental health, and more importantly, for all of us to become advocates for anybody who may be impacted by mental health. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the parents who are joining in, especially on a Friday night. I know after a busy week of work, it is not always easy to take time out on a Friday night, but you all did. It truly shows your commitment to learning, to be a support to somebody that you love, and so you can have the best of knowledge. And I really acknowledge that. So before I begin, I just wanted to let everybody and anybody know, I know the topic we're covering, it's a heavy topic. So if any moment, any one of us can get triggered by something I may say or show, and if that happens, please do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself in that moment. If you need to step away, please step away. If you need to do something else, please do that. So we can do the first step of taking care of our own well-being and showing good self-care. I would like this to be interactive. I know you can't see me and I cannot see you, and I know you cannot respond in verbally with me, but I'm hoping by using the chat box with the question box, you may be able to interact with me as I'm presenting today, so we can get the most out of it. So please don't hesitate to write a comment or an answer to a question that I may pose on you, so we can make this the most beneficial for everybody, inshallah, tonight. So oh, here we go. Sorry, I pressed the mute button by mistake. Not the most tech-savvy person here, so I apologize. So before we begin, I would love to know, when you guys think about mental illness, what comes to your mind? Do you get an image, a thought, maybe somebody that you know in mind, or somebody that you may have seen in media, in TV, or other places, or words? What comes to your mind? Unbalanced behavior, very nice. Aggression, being hyperactive, very nice. Different personalities, depression, very nice. Mood swings, anxiety, depression, really nice, yes. Depression, anger, anxiety, yeah. Excessive worry, yep, which is part of anxiety, sadness, depression. Very nice. Yep, it's a whole lot of issues, and it's a lot overthinking. Very nice. Thank you so much for responding. I love that. So you guys are absolutely right. It's a lot of different diagnoses. I'm going to cover just a couple of them today briefly, because as you guys are writing, and I can see this, it's a lot of questions and a lot of different symptoms that you may be seeing. So the thing with mental illness, before I even begin to address anything, is to know that it doesn't really discriminate. Mental illness can impact anyone from different ages, different, male, female, different socioeconomic status, religion, where you live, what you have studied. It doesn't really have any differentiation. I have been in the field for over 20 years now. And in the course of my work, I have seen people from literally every background, from, I work with adolescents and above, so from 12 to like 60s and 70s. It didn't matter what the age is. It didn't matter what their income level was. It didn't matter what their profession they were in, if they were a student, if they were a professor, if they were a physician, if they were a business person. It impacts anybody, and it could happen at any time. Sometimes, most of the time, we'll talk about the ages in just a few moments, but people show up in the office at different ages. And in the course of my work, now, alhamdulillah, I'm seeing more of awareness growing with Muslims themselves. So now they are seeking help, which I think it's a great sense of awareness of how it's growing in our community to accept that we also are impacted by mental health issues, just like the community at large. So when you think about mental health, you have to think about the entire person. We have to think about how it impacts us in many different ways, because it does affect us in many different ways. Mental health can affect our emotional well-being, which is about how our emotions are. Because many times it is so easy for us to say, hey, I'm feeling really happy or I'm excited, those positive emotions. But when we are experiencing some of the other emotions like sadness, anger, fear, worry, it is not always so easy to express it, but those are getting impacted by somebody who is struggling. And at times when they may express those emotions, somebody who's at the other end may not know how to respond. Or they may say things as, boys don't cry, things will get better. This is a test. So a lot of times when people hear some things like these, it may make them feel, oh, my emotions, they don't really matter. I'm just feeling this, it'll just get better. I can just ignore them. It may make them feel as if their experiences don't even count. Hence, they don't matter, and they can sort of forget about their experiences, but they can't really forget about them because they are hurting, and it tends to manifest even more. Another way mental health really impacts is our psychological well-being, which simply means how well we are functioning in our life. Somebody who is struggling with mental health issues, they may have difficulty functioning in everyday life. Even simple things as taking a shower, getting out of bed, brushing their teeth, struggling with getting homework done, even going to work. Simple things that a lot of us take for granted and say, oh, what's the big deal? Why can't you get up and change your clothes? Somebody who's struggling, that is purely a big struggle for them. The amount of energy it takes them, it is really, really difficult. I had a client one time who was struggling with just taking a shower, because every time he would take a shower, it would drain the energy and he would have to take a nap after the shower. It gets to be really difficult when somebody is struggling. It could impact how somebody is thinking about themselves. They may have a negative view of themselves. They may really believe that I'm not really lovable. I'm not really good enough. I keep failing. I've let my family down. I've let myself down. And those negative beliefs can really, really accumulate and have a huge impact on their well-being. It impacts their social well-being. They may pull away from family and friends. They may not want to hang out with them anymore. They may retreat and say, you know what, I don't want to go out today. Even though I used to love going to parties, today, I don't want to go. Or their moods are getting impacted, so they may get into more conflict with people. Little things can aggravate them, and they may pull away. And a client recently said to me, when I am feeling the most pain, the most saddest, that is when I need the people the most. But that is also the most difficult time for me to reach. So I don't, because it's too much work and it hurts too much. So I stay alone, hurting even more. So somebody who is struggling with mental illness has a lot of pain, both physical and emotional. I know some of you guys had said a lot of these things. As I said, what does mental looks like? You had said personality changes, anxiety, depression, and that is all true. When you think about mental disorders, it is a huge umbrella of different diagnoses. And each diagnosis has its own characteristic, its own signs and symptoms. We cannot go through all of them today because that is a lot of diagnoses. So today we will just briefly talk about anxiety and depression and some suicide tendencies as well. because those are the two most common diagnoses. Depression being the most common diagnosis, 1 in 8 people is impacted by depression. And a lot of times people have something called two diagnosing or co-occurring diagnosis, meaning they could have one diagnosis, but they also have a second. For instance, somebody could have depression and anxiety at the same time. Somebody could have a ADHD diagnosis and anxiety at the same time. They could have a substance abuse diagnosis and a diagnosis of ADHD, depression, bipolar, anxiety. A number of different diagnoses coexist with substance abuse. So when somebody comes into therapy, we have to look at the entire person. It has to be a holistic approach, which means that when suppose, somebody calls my office and says, I want to bring in my child, my teen, because I just caught them using, a substance, marijuana, for instance. Can you please see them? So when they come in, I have to do a full assessment, meaning I have to look at all parts of them, all systems in their lives, meaning I have to assess their substance abuse. I have to assess their mental health. I have to assess their school to see how they're performing in school, what their motivation, how are their grades, how are their interactions with their peers, how are their friendship groups, how are their interaction with their teachers, how are things at home, are they getting along with their siblings, with their parents, is there a trauma history, is there something else that I need to pay attention to in addition to what has already been shared. So we try to do a holistic approach, and when we do this, it is called a biopsychosocial. So you look at all parts of them, the biology, the psychology, and their social lives. Because when you treat the whole person, it is when you're able to get the most benefit, and you can get to hopefully some of the causes and some of the things that are happening that are leading up to those symptoms and diagnoses. So as I say causes, what do you think causes mental illness or mental disorders, if you were to take a guess? Okay, well, chemical, yep, I'm seeing some things, trauma, chemical imbalances, social disturbances, absolutely, genetics, you guys are getting it completely right. There are multiple factors, multiple factors. It is rare that only one reason is the reason for that diagnosis or for that struggle. It is extremely rare. Usually it's a combination of different things, right? Somebody could have a genetic predisposition. What does that mean? A lot of these disorders, they have been shown there is a genetic component to it. You're just like, heart disease, it runs in families. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. It may simply mean that you have a tendency and you need to be aware. And if the environment is right, it could prompt that response. They did a study on mice actually, and the study is through the field of epigenetics, just to see how genetics could has an impact on our well-being. And what they found was, what they did in the study was, they had the male mice get associated fear with the smell of cherry blossoms. So they would smell the cherry blossom, and then they would have a shock response. So the mice, these male mice, developed this association, smell cherry blossom, and you're shocked. So they developed this anxiety, heightened anxiety, fear response. And then they mated these male mice with female mice who had not been exposed to this fear response. And then what happened when they had baby mice, they wanted to test to see if these baby mice would have the similar reaction of the dad or the mom. Would they be fearful of cherry blossoms or would they not be? And what they found was their children had the fear response, even though they have never been exposed to that fear connection. Because it was in their genetic, it showed up. And with later on, as they did more, it went down through generations because the environment was much more positive and conducive to a different environment. They were able to have a change in their genetic makeup later on. But genes can have a huge impact. And so can different environmental factors. I know a lot of you are writing, right? Trauma, it could be an incident, absolutely. Right now, a lot of things are happening in our environment. So bullying could have an impact. The stress of doing well in school could have an impact. A lot of things in the environment can have an impact. So can our lifestyles and events in life. It could be a combination of all of these factors combined that could lead to the development of a mental health disorder. I'm just showing you some brain scans. I'm sure you're wondering, what do they mean? You know how a lot of times if somebody has a medical diagnosis, you get a medical report to say this is the reason why you're hurting. If you break your arm, you get an x-ray and you see a broken bone, or you see a cast, so you know that somebody is hurting. So they have been able to study thanks to technology and science that the brain chemistry looks really different with somebody who has a mental health condition versus somebody who does not. An ADHD brain looks different from somebody who does not have ADHD. Same as depression, same as PTSD, same as other diagnoses. It has a component that you may not be able to physically see it, but their brains and their bodies are experiencing it. So I want you to imagine, because a lot of times you can't see them, but they are experiencing it because there's no broken bone. They're shown only in symptomology. So I want you to imagine this, that you are holding a water bottle, even just a regular water bottle, 16 ounces, and you're holding it above your head in your arm. And imagine if you are holding it, what that feels like. I'm raising my hand even as I say this right now. So I want you to imagine if you're raising your hand even without the bottle right now. Initially it doesn't hurt so much. You can hold on to it. But imagine if you have to hold on to that place for a long time, what that would feel like. After hours, after days, after weeks, after months, even after years. That's how a lot of people with a lot of these diagnoses, with these mental health conditions, maybe they are suffering in silence because they may not even realize that they are suffering with something. I had a client tell me one time before they were diagnosed with ADHD, oh, I didn't know that when I would daydream and look outside my window in my classroom, that wasn't normal. I thought everybody did that. They didn't realize it because they didn't know anything different. So sometimes we cannot see them because we don't know anything different, but they are suffering in silence. So I'm curious, do you guys know how common it is to have a diagnosis of anything, for instance, or a particular diagnosis? Do you know how common it is to have a mental health condition right now? Okay. Yeah, somebody wrote 1 in 5. That's very true. That's what statistics have found. Numbers are increasing. So 1 in 5, which is about 51.5 million Americans, adults and adolescents, have a mental health issue. That's about 20 to 25%. 1 in 20 millions, which is about 13.1 million adults, live with this serious mental illness, meaning it having a serious impact that they're having a hard time functioning in school or at work. About half of all chronic, when I say chronic, I want you to think about something that's lifelong maybe, because some of the diagnoses, they are lifelong. They're chronic. They don't just disappear. We have to learn to manage them and work with them. So one half of the chronic illness begins by the age of 14, which is about the start of high school, and 3/4 by the age of 24, which is around the time they're ending college and starting adulthood, their first job. As I said before, a lot of the diagnoses tend to co-occur. So what they have discovered, about 3.8 have a co-occurring diagnosis of substance abuse and mental illness. So a lot of times somebody is using substances, there is a mental health reason and they are self-medicating themselves. What that means is if somebody has a hard time sleeping because maybe they have some anxiety and they cannot let those thoughts go, so they may smoke or use substance to help calm them, not knowing that there are other ways of dealing with that mental illness. And many tend to hide their symptoms. They don't show. So they suffer in silence because they don't want to show and they don't want to let anybody know. So I'm curious, As I'm sure some of you, or maybe many of you, have heard some of these statistics for suicide before, because there's been a lot in the news lately because the numbers have gone tremendously up. And we have seen a lot of these suicides happening all across US, even within our Muslim community right now. Right now, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America. And it's the second leading cause of death in kids between the ages of 10 to 24. Just yesterday in my suburb where I live in, I just heard of a 15-year-old committing suicide just yesterday. The rates have gone up. It have gone up by 35% since 1999. And 90% of the suicides that are committed, they had an underlying mental illness. Imagine for every 2 homicides that are committed in the US, there are 3 suicides that are committed. And for every 1 completed suicide, there are 25 attempts that are made. Before, women had more attempts in suicide and men or boys had more completion. Now the girls and women are also catching up because everybody is using much more lethal means of committing suicide. And you may wonder, does this happen in Muslims, and does that, are the numbers the same? So actually they did a study just in 2019. So just before COVID started, around the same time period. And the study was done by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. And they asked different participants from different faith groups to see and they asked a simple question. And the question that they asked was, have you ever tried to do anything to try to kill yourself or make yourself not alive anymore? And what they discovered in that study was Muslim adults were twice as likely to report suicide attempts than people from other faiths. And it didn't matter where on the religious spectrum they fell. The level of religiosity did not impact the odds of them attempting suicide. It was the same. I know just at the beginning of Ramadan, we had that incident in Texas where the family had gone through suicide homicide. And I know there have been many other Muslims across the US who have committed suicide or attempted suicide. These numbers are there and they are impacting us as much as they're impacting the general public. And the COVID has made it even more difficult. What they discovered was in COVID in 2020, the numbers of depression for youth went up even more. Right, we have said 1 in 5, that's about 20 to 25%. But they discovered in 2020, their numbers of depression went up to about 60% for kids under the age of 18. That's in about 1 in 2. The lack of isolation, not being able to interact with other kids, having to wear a mask, being limited, had a huge, and not being able to go to school last year, all of that had a huge impact on their well-being, on the kids' well-being. And the numbers of depression has gone up tremendously. Many more have been in treatment and getting medications if needed, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. But the impact is real, and every therapist that I know is talking about it, that we are all getting more calls now than ever before. People are so severely impacted with COVID than ever before. I'm just going to show a brief video. It's only about maybe 2 minutes long, and then we can then talk about your impressions.
Hey, good morning. Hey. Good morning.
Hey, don't know if you heard, but Archie took his life last night.
Any thoughts, impressions, feelings about the video? Yep, it is serious. Absolutely. It is very serious. Yeah. This is happening all across. So what do you think prevents somebody from seeking help? A lot of times what I hear is I'm afraid to seek help because I'm afraid what people are going to say if I go and seek therapy. There's a lot of fear, a lot of stigma. Log kya kahenge? Right? There's a lot of shame. I'm supposed to be strong. I should be able to handle this. This is my test. I don't want to put my dirty laundry for anybody to hear and see. They get really concerned about, right? If like what's wrong with me if I cannot handle my pain? If I have these thoughts, if I cannot function. There's a lot of fear, even about confidentiality. Like if I go and see somebody, is it going to be out there? Is everybody going to know what I'm doing or what's happening? So I get to hear this, a lot of this fear coming in. If I go in, what if my friend finds out that I'm seeking help? Are they going to see me differently? Are they going to judge me? What if, somebody finds out that my son or daughter is struggling with something? Then what if they can't get married? I don't want people to know. It may even be just what they believe about mental health, right? Boys shouldn't cry. It's a test. We should be able to get through it. I don't want to be a burden on other people and share my struggles with other people. A lot of these things keep people out of offices as they're holding on to their pain for years. So in therapy, I'll just briefly talk about that because I know that comes up about confidentiality every time. In therapy, everything you say, it is kept completely in confidence. Only exceptions are thoughts about harm for yourself or somebody else. It's all about safety. So I tell my people, when you're coming in, whatever you say, it is kept in confidence. So this way they know that they can speak freely and then they can find a confident person, a person that they can confide in without the fear of judgment, without the fear of what's going to happen if they do talk about certain things. So what are some of the signs? I know somebody said it is signs of depression. I've listed some of them. What does depression look like? It looks like with somebody who's feeling really down, like they don't have any energy. They physically feel tired. They may even have a hard time taking care of their, everyday self-care, of getting up, putting on clothes, brushing their teeth, taking a shower. It gets to be so difficult for sometimes that with the lack of energy that they sometimes tend to sleep a lot, right? So they may have changes in sleep patterns. They may be sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, meaning that they may be insomniac. They're staying up all night worried about everything that's happening. Or they may just be sleeping a whole lot more. There's changing in their appetites. They are having no desire to eat, or they may be eating too much, eating everything to self-soothe. So they're emotionally regulating themselves by eating. They could have a lot of mood changes, a lot of anger, irritability, right? So every little thing can cause them to get upset, right? You say something and they be like, oh, whatever, right? I know what I'm doing. So it could just get them to be upset a lot more easily. And then, of course, they have thoughts at times with depression, with severe depression, of committing suicide. And despite depression being treatable, only a third of the people who are experiencing depression or suffering from depression seek treatment. Most of them are suffering and not even telling anybody. A lot of people who have signs of depression, they have no interest in activities, things that they have previously have liked to do. They don't have a desire to do any of those things. They are feeling really helpless, so they withdraw. They lose contact with friends. They lose contact with, they don't want to go and play basketball like they used to, or they don't want to go and hang out with their friends like they used to, leaving them even more alone. Some signs of anxiety. Anxiety is normal. We all feel anxiety. It is normal. It is normal, right? But when that anxiety gets to be excessive, that's where the sign of problem is. When you cannot control it, when you can't manage it, it doesn't let you allow to relax, right? For instance, if you are taking a test, it is normal to be anxious to take that test because you're concerned about your grade. But if that anxiety makes it difficult for you to perform on your test, then that could be problematic because then it gets to be excessive. Then you're having a hard time with concentration, having a hard time controlling it, having a hard time letting it go. And again, it could be a combination of the environment and genetics for both depression and anxiety. So what are some signs of suicide? Because nobody wants to really kill themselves. Everybody that I know who's been my patient, and as I said, I've been doing this for a long time, I've never come across one person who had thoughts about suicide who had wanted to die. They all talk about it because they are in excessive emotional pain. They talk about how they're wanting the pain to stop. So when somebody is thinking about suicide, there are signs. It is preventable if you catch it. So for somebody who's thinking about suicide, they'll say something to somebody. Maybe they'll say something to a friend, an adult, a teacher, somebody, somewhere. They may say something that they have thoughts about killing themselves. They have excessive amount of guilt and shame. Like, I have failed everybody around me. I didn't do this right. I didn't get this grade. I've let my family down. I just lost my job. I've let my family down. They feel like they are a burden on others and people are better off without them. For them, those verbal thoughts are very clear in those moments. They feel empty, hopeless. They have no reason to live. They can't even tell you what the purpose are. They have really given hope. And they are in emotional pain, unbearable emotional pain. Some of the behaviors to look out for. If they're thinking about it, they're doing some things. They may make a plan. They're researching ways to commit suicide. They may even write up a will. They give away their things, right? Here, they may give away their favorite stuff to their friends or family. There is an increased risk in mood swings, increased risk in risk-taking behaviors. They're truly withdrawing from people, socially isolating even more. They could even be using more drugs and alcohol as a way of self-harming or self-sabotaging themselves. Again, change in appetite and change in sleep patterns. I know somebody had asked, what do you do if you have trouble at sleep at night? I'm going to come to that in just a moment. So for them, it's excessive patterns like these that is leading them to think about suicide. And these things are happening within our community as well. So we have to be aware. We need to know the signs. We need to know the symptoms. So since when somebody comes, talks to us, we know what is happening and we can provide them the resources. And if somebody is making a plan, if somebody is talking about suicide, you need to get them help immediately. You have to take them to the hospital right away. You have to call 911 right away. If somebody has a plan, because you don't know if they're going to act on it or not, we cannot really judge that. They have to be taken to the hospital so they can be assessed to see what they're needing in that moment. So I really want you to know, I know these are really hard topics, but that you're not alone. We're not meant to handle these things alone, right? As you know, Islam teaches us we have to do everything in a community. Like MCNA does such a great job bringing all of you guys here together because we are a community. We have to be there for each other. We have to know that there is help out there. There are therapists, there are helplines, and I'm going to share some of those helpline numbers with you guys in just a couple minutes. But there is help. If you don't know where to start, if you see some of these signs with your kids for depression, for anxiety, or for something else, you can start with just your school counselor and say, this is what I'm noticing. And they may give you some resources in your area. If you want to reach out to a therapist, they are, no matter where you live in the US, that's one of the benefits, alhamdulillah, of being here. There are therapists in every city. There are Muslim therapists all across the US as well. And talk therapy does work. Meaning, like, you know, just how I showed you the brain imaging with different disorders, when they come up, the brains look different. But they found with talk therapy, there are structural changes in brain as well. So it does help to have somebody listen with empathy, to help listen with no judgment, excuse me, with no bias, but simply be there for you so you can talk about what is happening, to help you find other ways of dealing with pain, to help you find ways to help negate those negative thoughts, to help you find a way to start reconnecting with friends and family in a different way. And sometimes you do need medication for different diagnoses. And medication and therapy combined is a very common thing, and it has tremendous benefits at times. And medication doesn't have to be lifelong, depending upon the diagnosis, it may be lifelong, but for some, it is for a period of time. And then with the help of a physician, you can be weaned off. But just like you would take medication if you had diabetes or you had another medical issue, to me, this is the same thing. If you're hurting physically with a medical condition, this is also a medical condition. And medication is a resource. It is one of the cures for some of these mental health issues. You can also have a holistic lifestyle, which means living a lifestyle that is more holistic with good sleep, good eating habits, exercise. All of these things make a tremendous, tremendous difference. They have found studies and they have found that the benefits of exercises, because it increases dopamine and endorphins, can help you boost your depression and boost your moods and lessen depression and anxiety. It has a holistic approach then. If someone's having trouble at sleep, you need to find out what's really happening with that sleep. Is it because they are on social media at night? Is that one of the reasons? Or if there's a different reason, they cannot maybe let go of their worries. If that is the reason, that they may need to talk to a therapist to find ways of letting go of that worry. If they're having trouble at sleep, you may need to find out what their sleeping habits are. There's something called having a good sleep hygiene, which means you have to create a bedtime ritual. You have to create good sleeping habits. meaning you go to sleep at the same time, you get up at the same time. You have rituals before you go to sleep, meaning you do A, B, and C. Just like you would do that, when babies are young as parents, we do, the same pattern every day. We have a routine for their sleep time. We may do, for instance, we may give them a bath, we may read them a book, and then we may put them to bed. So the baby knows, okay, I do bath, I read a book, I get into my pajamas, and then I go to sleep. They have a ritual. We have to create rituals for their sleep as well at night, meaning they do A, B, and C, same sequence every night, and they go to bed around the same time and they get up at the same time. But if that alone isn't working, then maybe they need to consult somebody to help figure out why they're having a hard time sleeping at night. But you can also do a lot of things in terms of building and nurturing resiliency, building and doing things in your own home. You can do that by creating a safe, nurturing environment. What does that mean? It means you're creating a home where a child can turn to you and let you know when they are hurting. They can let you know that they've been holding that water bottle for way too long and their arm's about to give out. And you can do that by building a relationship where they can turn to you, because there's no fear of getting in trouble for sharing something that you may be uncomfortable with. And when they do share, you listen empathically. What does that mean? You listen without any judgment. You listen, and then you validate. Validate simply means you help recognize what they are feeling, and you imagine what that would feel like, and see if you can find any ounce of what they're saying to be true that you can agree with. I'll give you an example. Imagine your daughter comes home and she's just in a bad mood, and you have no clue why she's in a bad mood. You know something happened in school, but you have absolutely no clue. And then you find out somehow that she tells you, oh, my friend's having a party and I did not get an invite. You can say, oh, that's okay, you'll get a different invite. Maybe she forgot about you. Maybe she meant to invite you. You can say all of these things that you think are going to help her feel better, and they may. But what if you did something else? What if you didn't try to solve it for her? What if you just listened? What if you listened to her feelings behind that? And what if you were able to understand them and let her know that you understand them? What if you were able to say something like, man, that really sucks. She's having this party and she forgot to invite you, or she didn't invite you. I would be mad too. It makes sense that you're angry. It makes sense that you're sad right now. I would feel sad too. Imagine what that would do to her. Imagine if she was able to turn to you and get that empathic listening as if you truly were in her shoes. You were able to validate, which means you're able to say, yes, what you're feeling is okay. What you're feeling under the circumstances, it makes sense. Imagine what that would do to your relationship. And in the process, you're helping her recognize her own feelings. What if she's feeling, it makes sense. You're raising an emotionally intelligent child at that time. And she can turn to those feelings and grow and learn from them and help recognize them. And because you're able to connect that with her, she's going to find a way of connecting with you. I can turn to my mom because she understands what I'm feeling. I can tell her all of this because she doesn't get angry. She doesn't judge me. She can just hear what I have to say, which would make it easier for her to open up and talk about even more difficult things. And when you create that environment, then you can talk openly about mental health. You can ask her if she's feeling sad, if she has thoughts about hurting herself. You can ask her if she had a hard day, and not just that she had a bad day or a good day, but how does she feel during this day? Whether they were positive, like good emotions, or were there negative emotions, like sadness, anger, worry. There is a great movie out there. I don't know if anybody has seen this. It's an older movie. It's an animated movie. It is called Inside Out, where they do this amazing job in talking about emotions in this animated movie. And they talk about how you are able and you are that most of us feel a number of different emotions at a given time, and that is okay, that you can be happy and sad at the same time. And it's a process of learning to accept both of those feelings. And that's where your understanding of yourself comes into place, because you're able to make room for all of those different experiences. Similarly, I'm going to guess, as humans, as me, as you, in this past hour, we probably have felt a number of different emotions. What if all of those emotions were okay? What if they can coexist at the same time? What if you were able to make room for our kids to have these emotions to coexist at the same time and letting them know? Making our home to be a place where you can talk about these issues openly, in the safety, in the relationship with you. They're just some things what not to do. I know it says up front, but it applies to any and all of us, of ways of putting down or minimizing their experience. Here are just some ways to nurture your child, right? Using open-ended questions, using touch to teaching them how to be safe, giving them that love, that affection, modeling good behavior, using their behaviors as a way to process their thoughts and feelings, setting the right boundaries. There's a lot of things in here. I hope you'll get a chance to look through them. I hope that you'll get a copy of this so you can look at them in a more detailed way. But I know we're going to run out of time, and I want to give you guys enough time for questions and answers. But there are a number of resources that you can turn to. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available 24/7. Somebody picks up that number whenever you call. The crisis line, you can just text hello to that number and somebody will get back to you. They're also in the Nasiha Muslim Mental Health Hotline. It's available as well. And then there is Amala Muslim Youth Hotline that the youth can reach out to, just to talk to another Muslim youth or Muslim therapist who may be on call to help them. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, somebody just wrote, I'm sorry. Sometimes they think there's a generational gap and we cannot feel the same or in the same boat. Yes, so they may feel that way, right? Because there may be a difference between the way you, even with me, right? I have kids, just a different time period. And there are many things that I may not understand about their experience. So what I recommend in those times is be curious, find out. You can simply say, you're right, I may not understand, right? The lingo is changing. Different things come up, especially with the social media. Things are coming at a faster pace than ever before. So acknowledge it, that you are from a different generation. There's no shame in it, right? I have teenagers as well. I'm not a teenager anymore. I was once, but I'm not anymore. And things are different now than they were when I was in high school. So I will acknowledge that. I will say, yep, you're right. I am from a different generation. Why don't you tell me what it's like for you right now? Why don't you tell me what it is that you're experiencing that is different from my experience? So it becomes a conversation about their experience. So that's what that's what I mean by listening empathically, right? You're creating a place for you to be curious about their experience without judgment, right? They're probably seeing things and experiencing things that you and I never experienced growing up because times are different. So I would be curious, I would ask, I would find out what their experience is when they say that. So that's what I would say. Oh my goodness, sorry, my questions sort of stopped and now they all came again. All right. Somebody wrote, when they have a mental health issue and start taking weed, should we see a psychiatrist or who should we see? Absolutely. If they are smoking or using any substance, drugs, alcohol, pills, anything, like I said, a lot of the times they're self-medicating. And that needs to be taken a look at by a psychiatrist or by a therapist. So they can do an assessment to see what their needs are, Because most often when people are using it, they're not just, some people may start with just experimentation, and that's a different way of doing it to start off, but somebody is self-medicating it, they need to be looked at. So you need to look at both of those things, whether it's recreational use or it's abuse, or for any reason it needs to be taken a look at. So you can go to a therapist to get an assessment with somebody who has a background in substance abuse, or you can start with a psychiatrist, and they will probably also recommend a assessment with a therapist who is trained in substance abuse. I'm just seeing if there are any things that I had missed. If you guys have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to post. I'm just trying to read out because I know somebody asked, what is the best and the easy way to get a person out of depression? I wish there was a really easy answer for that one. Most of the time, it's not an easy solution. A lot of times you need to reach out to a professional therapist to help you with that. The reason I'm saying that is, imagine if you have a broken bone and you try to fix it yourself. I'm not sure how much help you'll be able to do that unless you are a trained physician who knows how to do that. Even if you have a dislocated shoulder, you probably wouldn't try to put it back in yourself unless you knew what you were doing. So even if my own child has depression, I wouldn't treat them. Physicians don't treat their own kids, their own family members. Why? Because you need that distance. So you need to probably see somebody to help assess to see what is going on with that depression. What is going on with that symptomology? Because sometimes it could just be a really simple thing that maybe they had a really bad day or they're struggling in school because something happened, or sometimes it could be more severe. Maybe they're getting bullied. Maybe there is something else going on. So I would recommend, if you're noticing any kinds of depression symptoms that we covered before, which includes thoughts of hopelessness, thoughts of being sad and blue, pulling away from people, social isolation, giving up on things that they find pleasure in, thoughts about suicide, changes in appetite, changes in sleep, feeling as you have let yourself down or others down. Consult with a therapist. If you don't know where to start with your school therapist, school counselor, and see what they would recommend initially. And if they're seeing what you're seeing based upon what you have shared, they may recommend that you see a therapist or a psychiatrist. I will start with a therapist and get that assessment done to see what they're doing. Because when somebody is depressed, like I said, they're carrying the weight of a water bottle over their head, and it may be so much and you can only carry that by yourself for so long. You're gonna need help. And in Islam, it teaches you to reach out to your brother in need, to check on them when they're hurting. For every medical illness, there is a cure. Allah has created that. And for mental illness, there are cures as well. As therapists, you are trained in different modalities to help assess what's going on and to help treat what's going on, to help them get access to those places that are really hurting. So that's what I would recommend, is to get some assessment done. I'm not sure if I missed any other question. If I did, I apologize. I'm trying to see if you have written a question before this, please let me know because I might have missed it. Any other questions? Oh, somebody said, what do you do if you have trouble with sleep at night? Well, it will depend if it's just happening sporadically, it may just be stress in life. But if it's becoming more habitual, that it needs to be seen and addressed. So one of the first things I start off with, if somebody's having trouble with sleep at night, I ask them what their phone usage is, what their electronic usage is, because there is the blue light that comes from it. And I always tell people, let's try to put those away at least an hour before bedtime. Then I ask them, what is their nighttime ritual? A lot of people don't have a nighttime ritual. Then I say, can we start creating one? which means you do A, you do B, you do C, so your body gets to develop a pattern of going to sleep. Then I also tell them, if it's a child and if they're doing homework on their bed, then I tell them, don't do homework on your bed anymore. Your bed should be for sleep, and your body needs to distinguish a place to sleep and a place to have fun, or even a place to do work. So if you are doing homework, or if you're doing other things on your bed, try to move that to a different part of your bedroom. Maybe have a desk in there. Maybe do the homework on the dining table downstairs. So move, so this way your bed becomes a place where you go to sleep, a sanctuary. Then I also say, develop some habits of making sure that you are getting up at the same time every day in the morning, even weekends, which is a hard one for kids because they want to sleep in. But the reason for that is, the more regular time you have of getting up in the morning, the more your body is able to adjust and accommodate to those changes by going to sleep at a better time. So you do some of those. And if somebody has a lot of worries, I ask, can you maybe find a way to put those worries on a piece of paper for the night? So you try, maybe I do something called a worry time. If somebody has a lot of worries and they can't put those thoughts away, they're racing thoughts and that's preventing them from going to sleep, is let's create a worry time. So you worry for 15 minutes, you create a time, you write down everything that you're concerned about on this piece of paper, and you put this piece of paper away. Now, so next time a worry comes in, you tell that worry, I will think about you tomorrow in my worry time. And you do that every day. I also recommend people at bedtime to try some meditation. And there are some wonderful apps out there. Headspace is a wonderful one. Calm, I believe there is a Muslim one too. I want to call it Sabr, but I could be mistaken on that name. I'll have to make sure that I'm not saying the wrong one. But I know Headspace and Calm are two that I use with a lot of my clients as a habit of doing meditation at least once a day, even if it's just for like 1 or 2 minutes, because that really helps regulate a lot of your mindfulness activities and being more present. And for many, it helps them sleep better at night as well. Is spirituality helps to get you from depression? Absolutely. So when I talk about holistic approach, that's exactly what it is. You look at all parts, and spirituality is one of those parts that you look at. You look at how your spirituality is, like how important it is. How can you incorporate that in your life? How do you get in touch with those parts of you that want to turn to religion, turn to Allah, to incorporate Deen in your everyday life? Because it's a very essential part of our being, and we want to incorporate that as much as possible. Are there Muslim psychiatrists available? Yes, many, many, many are available. If you want to find a psychiatrist in your area, one of the easiest way, if you have insurance, go under the provider list, and then go under the list of psychiatrists, and you will find a whole list. In case you're wondering what the difference between a psychiatrist and a therapist is, psychiatrists prescribe medications, and therapists, they do the talk therapy. Therapists normally do not prescribe medications, and most psychiatrists nowadays, because of the way it's just been done over time now, they don't do a lot of talk therapy at this time. Is there a family and marriage counseling available? Yes, there are a number of many different, depending upon where you live. There are, I forgot to write them in my resource, but there are 3 different websites, and I will see if I can, if you email me, and my email address is on the first slide, I will give you the 3 websites that have a lot of numbers and information for Muslim therapists. One of them on top of my head is SEEMA, SEEMA, mentalhealth.com. They have a list of therapists in different states across the US. And you can go to your state, you can see who's around you, and then you will have to call to see if they have openings.
Yes, inshallah. And also we will post these resources and numbers on our Facebook page. So inshallah, all the sisters can access to that information as well.
Yes, I'll give you the other two websites as well. I will email them to you. And so this way you could include them with those other resources as well.
Sure,
All right.
inshallah.
So other question is, I'm trying to, and I may not be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to try my best to get to all of them. If a kid doesn't want to share with parents, what should I do? That's a very common thing. I have adolescents too. I have teenagers at home, and sometimes they don't want to tell you everything. It's understandable, right? So you try to create an environment at home as much as possible. And then if you're suspecting that there is something else, you find them a therapist. I work with a lot of teenagers, and I tell my teenagers many times, and I talk to their parents that, and they're like, oh, I don't know what my child is going through, what's happening with them, how do I help them? And then, and I tell them, I'll do what I can, but I'm not going to be a detective for you, but I will be a resource to you. So sometimes if you create an environment, like I said, with empathy and with validation, hopefully with that, they know they can turn to you, and they'll hopefully over time will trust that you're going to be there without judgment. If there is any fear that you're going to judge, you're going to get angry, they're not going to say anything to you. So creating a home environment where they can, where they can turn to you with empathy, then they'll be able to. I know somebody said they posted a question twice. I'm trying to find that question, so I apologize. Okay. How would you differentiate between mood swings, irritation because of hormonal changes, and mental illness? As a parent, you may have a hard time distinguishing it. It would have to do with the impact. That's how I would say, right? You're gonna see how much it's impacting their daily life. Because a mood swing wouldn't make somebody isolate themselves. A mood swings wouldn't change their appetites that much. Normal, they may eat more, but then you have to differentiate, is it normal growth changes that they're making them, compelling them to eat more or losing their appetite? Or is it something else going on? A hormonal change wouldn't make them feel down and depressed all the time. So you have to, and if you are having a hard time differentiating it, I would say consult, maybe even just start out with your pediatrician and say, this is what I'm noticing. Is this hormonal shifts or is there something more? And then they can do a basic assessment to differentiate between the two. Because hormonal shifts are not going to be as severe as depression would be. They'll be milder and the impact's going to be milder. With depression, the impact is more because it's impacting every part of their being. It's coming from more internal changes because there's a hormonal, there's a changes in their chemical, in their brains, plus their environment at that time. So if you're not able to differentiate between the two, I would say start with your pediatrician to see if it's something more than just hormonal shifts, because hormonal shifts don't last and they're not there on every single day. Is it hard to make an appointment with therapist? I'm guessing that's what you mean. It depends. Right now, unfortunately, I know many therapists are booked to capacity. So it may mean that you may have to call maybe a few to see who has openings. If not, reach out to one in your area and see if they can give you additional names to other therapists or counselors who has openings. But yes, that is the case right now. Unfortunately, many therapists are completely booked, but there are many still who are still have openings right now. How do I confirm if my kids have ADHD or ADD? You need to get an assessment. If you're suspecting ADHD or ADD, because their tendencies are they're having a hard time focusing, there's more impulsivity, there is because their brain chemistry is remarkably different. Therapists will do an assessment where they would ask a parent to complete a questionnaire, even a teacher to complete a questionnaire, because they want to see if those things are happening in multiple different environments. And as a parent, you cannot diagnose your own child. So that may be that you may need to go and see and get them professionally tested. If you want a full psychological testing, you can go to a neuropsychologist. They do a huge inventory for those diagnoses, or you can start off with your own physician to see, I am concerned that my child may have ADHD, and with ADHD, it is they do need treatment because it can have a huge impact on schoolwork, on relationships. So they have to learn how to manage those things. So by yourself, it'd be like me saying that how do you diagnose diabetes on your own? You can't really. Somebody has to run those tests and those inventories, those blood work for diabetes to say if you have it or not. Same thing with these diagnoses. You can't diagnose them on their own. You may suspect that. And if you're suspecting it, then I would say you need a confirmation by somebody who's trained to diagnose those diagnoses. I'm trying to make sure. All right, let me see if I understand this question. Any suggestions on how to approach my teen in an organic manner without her brushing me off? I'm not sure what the question is. Maybe you can reach out to me again and ask the question again so I can understand your question. I apologize for that. Let's see. Somebody asked, can we get a brain scan without a prescription to see if there's ADD or ADHD? Again, you would need to, brain scans are not that easy to get sometimes. So, and sometimes you don't even need but if you really want a confirmation, you can check without you would need to check, again, you have to talk to your physician, just like you would need to talk to your physician to get an x-ray done if your bone is broken. Same thing, you would need to talk to a physician for that assessment and for that scan to happen. But a lot of times you don't need a brain scan to confirm you can confirm a diagnosis, but there are other inventories that you can do that could help assess the diagnosis as well. With ADD, ADHD, they have some great inventories. You can do a neuropsych eval that could help differentiate the diagnosis of ADD with something else as well. And if you're looking for a list of a neuropsychologist, you can look through your insurance panel or even go through your Yellow Pages or just Google. If you're not able to know which ones to go, find a local Muslim therapist and see if they have a recommendation. And they may give you a list of somebody that they know in the area that they would recommend for a neuropsych testing, and they can help differentiate the diagnosis of ADD with something else.
Right.
I'm just going to see if I missed any questions, because in my chat, they're all over the place. They're not in a chronological order. I'm not sure if I've missed any questions right now. And if I have, I apologize. You do have my email address. You're welcome to reach out, and I'll do my best to get back to you with those questions. Or if you need a resource in your area, do reach out to, and I'll do my best to connect you with somebody in your area who can get you those resources that are more applicable to where you live.
Yes, inshallah, definitely.
Did I miss any questions from what you guys can tell? If you can see the chat, I think
No, I think you have covered pretty much. Alhamdulillah, for this amount of time, so many questions we took it. Alhamdulillah, and still, as you said, if you sisters, if you have new questions or you will come up some more questions, we have a email address of Sister Madiha. You can always contact her through email, inshallah, madiha@innerpeacetherapies.com. So she'll be able to answer, inshallah.
Absolutely. Just give me, a couple days and I will email you back.
Yes, please. All right, Sister Madiha, Jazakallah khairan kasira for this such an informative session, mashallah. I'm sure we all have learned something today and will benefit from, inshallah. As we all know and understand now, the knowledge and awareness about this important topic of mental health is a first step towards prevention. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect this ummah from all kind of illnesses and calamities. Ameen. And again, Jazakallah khair, Sister Madiha, for giving us time and clarifying a lot of things about anxiety and mental health being. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you immensely for your time and efforts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everyone's effort who have participated tonight and made this program possible. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Let's finish the session with the dua. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين Ameen. Jazakallah khairan everyone for participating and be here tonight. Inshallah, we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Alaikum assalam.